Welcome to Board Game Bunker. My name is Ryan, and today we're going to learn how to play the favorite game, Dutch Blitz. This is one of the ultimate games for large groups of peoples because you can play with as few as 2 people, but the game can easily be expanded to a nearly limitless number of players. Although, more players means more chaos because there are no turns in this game. It is an honest-to-goodness free-for-all, which I think may be why it's such a popular game. But despite the insanity, it's actually a very easy game to learn. So let's get right into the rules. After shuffling their deck, players deal the first 3 cards face up next to each other in a horizontal line. These 3 cards are known as the post piles. At any time during the game, you may move a card from a post pile into a center Dutch pile as long as 2 rules are met. The color must match, and it must be the next card in the ascending order on that pile. For example, the yellow 1, 2, and 3 have already been played by other players. This player may play the 4 and then the 5 from his or her post pile onto the Dutch pile. To create your Blitz pile, deal out the next 10 cards from your hand and place them in a pile face up to the right of your post piles. The topmost card in the Blitz pile may be played at any time. It may even be used to fill empty post pile spots. To continue with the previous example, we can play our number 4 yellow onto the number 3 yellow from one of our post piles, and then play the number 5 yellow onto the number 4 yellow, and then we can slide over this yellow 3 and then this blue 3 from our Blitz pile into the post piles. This effectively counts as getting rid of cards in the Blitz pile, which is very important as we'll learn about when it comes to scoring. We can also play cards directly from our Blitz pile into any of the applicable Dutch piles. Now, of course, a green 8 does not go on a yellow 5, but I can take this green 8 and put it right on a green 7, reducing my Blitz pile even further. Finally, there is the wood pile. These are cards that are played directly from your hand. Whenever you want, you may turn over the top 3 cards of your hand. This is very important. It always has to be 3, so that the bottommost card of those 3 is then face up on the table. If you can play that card in the center of the table, you may do so. Now in this example, I can't because I have a blue 5 and it doesn't play on green 8 or on yellow 5, but say the blue pile was already up to 4, I could then take the top blue 5 of my wood pile and place it into the middle right on this Dutch pile here, then effectively opening up this red 4 to play on any available space. Now in this case, there are not any available spaces for it to go, but if there were a red 3 out here in the Dutch piles, I could place this red 4 on top of it accordingly. If you cannot play the topmost card in your wood pile, then you may immediately turn over the next 3 cards in your hand, put them face up again, and this forms the next section of your wood pile. You can then play the blue 9 if applicable. If not, you can then play the next 3 cards in your hand. Red 8, if applicable, I can play it. Again, I can't. And I just keep doing that and doing that as fast as I can, always keeping an eye on what's in the middle of the table to see if there's anything that I can play. During the course of the game though, it is important to note that whenever there is an opening to play a card into a Dutch pile in the center of the table, you may take that opportunity. It doesn't matter if that opportunity comes from playing cards from your wood pile, from your post piles, or from your Dutch pile. You're not obligated to play a certain amount of cards from either pile. It's just whatever can go into the middle, can go into the middle. General rule of thumb is, if it's face up in one of your 3 sets of piles, and there's an applicable pile you can play it on, play it as fast as you absolutely can. At any time, a player may bring a new number 1 card from one of his or her piles to start a new Dutch pile in the center of the table. Any player can then build upon that pile by playing the next color in the sequence. For example, this player can play the red 2 on top of the red 1 that was just played. This player can play the green 1 to the center of the table, and then he can immediately play the green 2 on the center of the table, and then this player can play the green 3 at the center of the table. There are no turns in this game. All players are rapidly trying to play the next card on as many piles as possible, but on that note, there is no limit to the number of piles that can be played in the center of the table, even piles of the same color. We could literally have dozens of piles out here. We can have 4 red piles, 4 green piles, 4 blue piles, 4 yellow piles. Now, most of the time there won't be that many piles out at once, but sometimes it can get a little bit chaotic. There's no limit to the number of piles the player can start, as long as they start with the number 1 and work their way up from there in ascending order. The game is played over a series of rounds, and a round ends when the first player has played the final card in his or her Blitz pile. This is the pile all the way to the right, which we'll learn about in a moment. If you ever come to a bottleneck and find yourself unable to get cards into the center of the table, Or if your Blitz pile isn't reducing as quickly as you would like it to, you have the option to add cards onto one or more of your post piles, solitaire style. For example, say you have this red 9 stuck on the top of your Blitz pile, and as you can see here, none of the piles are red. It's going to take a long time to get to this red 9. And in the meanwhile, you have all these extra Blitz cards left that you need to get rid of. You can still get rid of this card by moving it onto a post pile if applicable. Now, cards placed onto a post pile must be placed in descending order and alternate boy, girl, boy, girl. In this example, I have a yellow 10 in a post pile. I could then slide this red 9 over and place it on top solitaire style. Cards played in this manner from the Blitz pile onto a post pile, solitaire style, count as effectively having left the Blitz pile when it comes to scoring later down the road. However, it's important to note that now if I want to play this yellow 10, I need to get rid of this red 9 first. You can do this as much as you want, and it's a pretty common strategy for many players. But remember, the key is to get cards into the middle of the table. While this solitaire strategy can be helpful to get rid of a logjam of cards in your Blitz pile, ultimately you need to get cards in the center of the table. So I recommend only using this strategy sparingly if your Blitz pile is clogged up. Now, if a player notices an error, for example, say this blue 7 was accidentally played on top of this blue 5, skipping the blue 6, the player who notices the error may yell, "Dutch!" This immediately halts the game so that the error can be corrected. If necessary, the scorekeeper will act as the referee. Once the error is fixed, play resumes as is. Now, there is one rule that the rules do not make entirely clear, ironically enough, and that's regarding what to do with your cards when you reach the end of your hand and you don't have a neat 3 cards left to turn over. In this case, I only have 2 cards left to turn over. Well, there are 2 main camps of thought when it comes to this scenario. Say that you do have these 2 cards left in your hand. Some players prefer to turn over the 2 cards, like so, pick up their deck, and then begin a new 3-card cycle. Other players prefer to turn over the last 2 cards, pick up the deck, and then finish the previous cycle of 3 cards by playing the last card, which you then can pick up and play. The rules do not state which option is correct. However, the rules do say this: turning over cards other than in groups of 3s is not permitted. Based on this clarification, my recommendation would be to use option number 2, where you turn over the last 2 cards, pick up the deck, and then finish the previous cycle by playing the last card, as this maintains the rule of turning over cards in groups of 3. Your group may still play the alternate method for sure, and that's definitely fine as a house rule. Just make sure that all players are in agreement beforehand with which way you're going to interpret this rule, as playing with option 1 could give those players an unfair advantage, since this method effectively resets your hand and makes it easier to cycle through new cards. Once a player plays the final card in his Blitz pile, he must instantly yell, "Blitz!" All players immediately stop playing cards and scoring for that round begins. To start, each player counts the remaining number of cards in their Blitz pile and reports this number to the scorekeeper. Now, of course, the player who finishes their Blitz pile reports a 0, and that's actually a good thing, as we'll find out in a second. And together, the players will collect and sort out the center pile of cards and return them to their proper player by card design. Each player will count the cards that they played into the center and give that number to the scorekeeper. For each card that a player plays into the center of the table, that card earns the player 1 point. However, for each card that a player had remaining in his or her Blitz pile, that card deducts 2 points from the player's total. Now, of course, the red player was the player who yelled Blitz, so he automatically has 0 points taken away from him. But say the blue player had 3 cards remaining in his Blitz pile, then every card in his Blitz pile counts -2 towards the total number of points he had already earned. Because of this, it is unfortunately possible for a player to earn negative points in a round. Multiple rounds of the game are played until a player reaches 75 cumulative points. The first player to score 75 points wins the game. If more than one player reaches 75 points during the game, the one with the highest score wins. But you do not have to play to 75 points. As long as the group agrees ahead of time, players may play to any predetermined number of points. Finally, in 2-player games, gameplay is exactly the same with one exception. Instead of there being 3 piles in the post piles, players play with 5 cards in their post piles, then with a Dutch pile like normal, and a wood pile like normal as well, where you cycle through the 3 cards. Gameplay beyond that is identical. And that's all there is to know about Dutch Blitz, the ultimate fast-paced game. If you have any questions, definitely feel free to drop us a comment, and we'll see you next time with more board game videos.